I'm covering entity framework relationships, and honestly I had to go look it up. I don't have this memorized. So let's see, tutorial code first, and try that one. That's a nice one. I've seen that a couple of times. And so this is basically the pattern that you're looking for. The importance of virtual is so that Entity Framework can inject its stuff and like do funky stuff with your class. This virtual means that it can be overridden, right? So what Entity Framework does is when it gives you back students or whatever's, it doesn't give you back the one that you wrote. It has its own version that overrides the version that you have its own version that overrides the version that you wrote, and it does extra stuff to it for stuff like what has changed that needs to be saved back to the database, that kind of thing. So this is a pretty good tutorial. I should just like leave it at that, but no, I'm going to walk my way through this. So here goes nothing. Here I go creating yet another console application. Okay, instead of using NuGet to install Entity Framework, I'm going to use something else called a Package Manager console. It can be found here. And it has, if you hit tab, gives you lots of different pieces of help. So install package, entity something, Entity Framework, that's the one. Go. That's the exact same thing as using the GUI. The GUI just triggers commands in this particular window. So I'm going to use blog posts and comments as my sample dataset. Let's go type that up. Let's also create our context. Additionally, for this demo, I'm going to set this up so that it drops and recreates every single time so that we have a consistent data source, that only the data that we put in is the data that's going to be there. CTOR tab. I'm now going to write up some very basic insert code to put some records in there. At first, I'm not going to relate them together, and we'll see what we get. Right about here, I realized I was confusing myself, so I decided to change gears and redo my data. Okay, what we have here is we are creating two blog posts, and I made that one is about colors, so the color goes with the red and the green. And then the other one is about an animal, and it has a comment for a zebra. I've added all these things and I'm saving all the changes. So let's take a quick look. Oh, we should probably add the bit where we dump all of the SQL out to console so we can see what's happening. Actually, what I'm going to do, instead of console.write, I'm going to use a different one. This is called system.diagnostics.trace.write. I ran into a problem here, and then I had to backtrack and take a look at the definition of log. What kind of a function is this? This is a action of string. Oh, well, in that case, given a string, we're going to write the string. There we go. So what this does is when you're running your program, it'll put whatever you did to this output window. There's actually a whole subsystem in Windows called the tracing system, and there are tools that you can use to listen in on trace events of other programs and blah 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 blah. Anyhow, this is very useful. Here we go. Let's put a breakpoint here and let's see in which order things happen. We're at our breakpoint. Now, if we take a look at the output window, which is really small, let's move this up. I'm grabbing it by the tab. I'm going to move it up into this area here. I'm going to get rid of the Server Explorer, which I don't need anymore. Hang on, a cat wants my attention. And now I'm back. So here's a bit where the Entity Framework went ahead and created our tables. It created a blog post table. It created a primary key on this guy, so it's really fast to find things by ID. Created the comments table. It created this migration history stuff, and we're now at our breakpoint, which see DWB or Control Alt B, but if I press Alt then DWB gets me to my list of breakpoints. I can also see a call stack. I'm at this spot over here, so I'm going to now step over that. Let's see what it did. Over to output. So here's a migration. So here it goes. So it's inserting a blog post for color, inserts the blog post for animal, and inserts red, then green, then zebra. Alright, that's cool. Let's try to do something where we actually associate the comments with the blog posts in question. I'm going to purposefully do the wrong thing here and show how it's the wrong thing. Alright, we are here at the place where we're creating the red comment. At this point, if we take a look at colorpost.blogPostID, it is 0. Animalpost.blogPostID is also 0. What happens is these are not given their IDs until Save Changes is called. So if we were to run this code, the data that it inserts, you can see here the comment for zebra, the second column, this one over here is blog post ID. Its value goes in the 0 as well. So all the comments are associated with blog post ID 0, and blog post ID 0 does not even exist because it started off with blog post ID number 1. So there are blog posts, are comments, and they're definitely not associated with the right blog post. So let's fix this. Let's fix it the hard way first. This is the not entity framework relationship way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save these blog posts first. So these two lines move up. We do a save changes here. And then we do red, green, and zebra. Add those guys, save those changes over there. So let's run. Okay, now we're going to hit a problem because we have this query is locking the database, so it won't be able to drop the database. So let's disconnect. So at this point, the it has inserted the 2 blog posts, and now we have the correct IDs, and now we can run the rest of this code, save changes, and we're done. Reconnect our thing and rerun our query. Whoa. I once again spend far too long managing database connections. Come on. So now everything looks correct in the database. Well, that's cool, but that's not quite what we can do with Entity Framework. So let's go on to the next level. In order to do this, I'm going to do public virtual. Then the type is going to be a iCollection of comments. And down here, the matching side of that is public virtual. The type is blog post, and the method name or the property name is blog post. So we do this. What we can now do I ran into some problems at this point where I was all set to show something off, and then the database couldn't get dropped because something had it open and I couldn't figure out what that was, and so I shut everything down and then stopped and restarted the local database. Okay, so this time when it created the database, it did a couple of things differently. First, it creates the table blog posts, creates the table comments, but then it goes and it creates an index in comments. If you're looking for a particular thing by blog posts, it'll find it pretty quickly. It adds a constraint so that if you have a blog post ID in comments, it must point to a blog post ID in blog posts. And if you delete the blog post, it deletes the comments that are associated with it as well. And does its migration history stuff after that. The rest of this is about the same. Okay, now, let's go doing this in closer to Entity Framework land. Now that we've told Entity Framework how the things are related to each other, we can do stuff like this. What I'm doing here is I'm telling each comment which blog post it belongs to, and this is before I have actually saved those blog posts to the database. We only have one save changes call at the bottom. It went in and it inserted a blog post for color. That one probably went in as 1. Inserted a blog post for animal. That went in as 2. Inserted a comment which was red, belongs to blog post 1. Did another comment for green, also belongs to blog post 1. Did another comment for zebra, belongs to blog post 2. So it figured out how the things were related to each other. It could insert them all in one go and put all the IDs with all the right people. Okay, let's try the other direction. So this time, instead of telling the comments which blog posts they're related to, I'm going to tell the blog posts which comments they have. So over here, I will go color post dot comments equals, I need something that's a collection, so new list of comments. If I run this one, I should get pretty much the same result. So over here you can see zebra going in related to blog post ID number 2. Now even better, we could have done this. What I'm doing here is I'm moving all of the comments to be right next to the blog post declarations. So as I declare the blog post, I also say, and here are the comments that go with you. And I'm trying to cut and paste my way to prevent typing, although I don't know that I'm all that successful in preventing typing here. Yeah. Once again, you can see the comments going in associated with the correct blog posts down here. Alright, so enough of inserting stuff. Now let's go do a little bit of querying. I'm going to do a different context just so that I don't have any of these variables in my scope. Should get all of the blog posts. Okay, so I've written a little bit of code that should go through, and I'm going to grab a blog. I'm going to grab all of the blogs here. Let's try that again. I'm going to grab all of the blogs here. I'm going to walk through each one. I'm going to write it out. I'm then going to go ahead and try to grab all of the comments associated with that blog and write out each one of those. Let's take a look at what kind of SQL gets generated. So here we are just before we do the toList on blog posts. Let's step over that. And what did it do? Oh, we didn't tell this particular context to dump out the SQL. Let's change that, do that. I pressed Ctrl C without selecting anything on the line, and that selected the entire line. Try that again. And step over. So here's the SQL that it generated. It's a pretty straightforward select statement, nothing too fancy. So here we go. I'm gonna step over that. There. Okay, now we're gonna grab all of the comments for a particular blog. As soon as I hit that one, it runs another little statement here. So it's grabbing the comment ID, comment text, and blog post ID for entity key value 1, blog post ID 1. So it grabbed all of the comments for that blog post. And then it runs through those guys. 1, 2, comes back up, grabs the next blog. As soon as we get to the comments field, it then loads the comments. This is now for blog post 2. Let's put our little marker there. And then continues running. And there we are. Oh, and we are dumping out. So, alright, this is where, remember when we did a virtual earlier? Here's the virtual. The reason this virtual exists is because Entity Framework doesn't actually use your class, blog post, or comment. It uses its own made-up class. Oh, wrong one, this one. It creates this class called a dynamic proxy, which inherits from your class, and then anything that you have a virtual on, it does its own code for, so it can keep track of what's been loaded and what hasn't been loaded and all of that other good stuff. Okay, so what we're doing over here is something called the n+1 problem, where you think you're just walking through some data in memory, but in reality your code is having to do a whole bunch of SQL queries under the hood. And doing a SQL query is way slower than working with something in memory. I'm going to try to find a link to a really awesome article about relative lengths of times between accessing things in memory versus accessing things on disk versus doing SQL queries against databases. So how to fix this is, in here we can use something else. We can say .include x.comments. So now let's take a look at this. The SQL that was generated is a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit larger, but it is actually very performant SQL. And what it effectively does is it grabs all of the information from blogs and all the related information from comments in one query. It takes all that stuff and reassembles it and spits out a blog which has its comments already filled out. So this time when we run the rest of this code, so let's see, our thing is over here. I'm going to run the rest of this code and we're done, and no other SQL was generated. So that is something called lazy loading, and it's something to be aware of when you're working with Entity Framework. The last thing that I wanted to do here was to cover updates. In general, for updates, you go and you find the data that you want to update and you just change it. And once you've done changing it, you do a save changes on it. Now let's try this. We're going to go run. I'm going to get to the spot. I'm going to go ahead and put another breakpoint right over here. I'm going to run it again. Get to that spot, step over that, and it did a whole bunch of updates. Now we've got a lowercase zebra, lowercase green, and lowercase red got written back out to the database. So that's relationships in the nutshell. There are many good tutorials out there that show in great detail all the different kinds of relationships you can have. Good luck.